Hello everyone and welcome to Underwater Adventures with Alex Mirabal. This video, it will have the addition of my daughter because you guys have asked me repeatedly, who is this person who is talking in the back and the questions she's making. So okay, we have decided, it was a little bit complicated for me to convince her to come on camera, but we have decided to bring her up into the video so you will have a better sense of what she's asking and you will hear better. So let's hope that this will be a very good addition and that you guys will enjoy it. We are always checking on the comments and your feedback, and we want to make the video to your liking. This is a very interesting video as well because we will be talking about shocking finds on shipwrecks. What have we found on shipwrecks that for the researcher are like big enigmas? So let's dive into it.
Hey everyone, if you want to watch the video in other languages, you simply click on settings, go to subtitles, select the subtitles in the original language, then go back to subtitles, activate the translate automatically, and scroll down and select your preferred language. In this case, we chose Spanish, obviously. Thank you so much all, and let's get on with the video.
Okay, why a find, an artifact that you find in a shipwreck could be shocking or intriguing or curious or strange for a researcher, a person who do that every day? Well, there are plenty of reasons. Some of them will be very clear for everyone because if you find something which is anachronic, something which don't belong to that time, it will be curious to you. Other reason is that you may find things that you don't know what they are. Many people, mainly the archaeologists, they think that we, the ones who work in this, know everything about everything under the water. Well, it's not. There are plenty of time that we come across artifacts that at the first view, we don't know what they are. Remember, we are dealing with things that have 200, 300, 400 years old, and they have changed a lot along the years. So what we know today of the normal use objects are not necessarily in resemblance of what they were in the past. So many times we find things that is very difficult to us to figure out what they were. And then this is how some of the shocking, when I said shocking, is most like curious. It's curious finds. It's something that you as a researcher, you will get as a motivation to keep on the research deeper to find out what that artifact is.
Something that you weren't expecting to find in the first place, that it feels out of place, I would say.
Absolutely. And there are some which are out of place, and I will be going into that, but there are others that you simply say, well, what is this? It doesn't look like anything similar I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's this combination, and it's one of the things that make our work so nice because it really keep you all the time learning. So in this video, I will mostly share with you my ignorance because in other videos, people have told me, oh, this is very informative. Okay, now I will share with you my ignorance, and I really expect that some of you will be able to help me in my research with some of these objects. You may have come across some of them. I know many of the viewers of the channel are specialized in this kind of work as well, so they might have said, oh, Alex, that's very simple, man, this is this and that. I'm really looking forward because I have a hard time finding out some of these artifacts, what they are.
So no pressure for you guys. You just need to give us all the answers that we need, but all good.
Yeah, exactly. That is what this channel is all about.
Yeah.
It's exchanging with colleagues and with friends. So, okay, let's start by a very special artifact for me. We are talking now about the Lady Burgess, in the wreck of the Lady Burgess. We have talked about this before in another video of challenging wreck sites. You can see it here. Lady Burgess was a wreck in which was very difficult to work because it's in a place where bad weather is almost a constant, and it's a very challenging wreck. So the Lady Burgess brought, together with the archaeological work, it brought a little bit, since the very beginning, a little bit of a personal touch, because I was always thinking, wow, what could have been, how bad could have been that night that the ship went into the rocks and broke apart in that place. So everything in the work was a little bit tainted by...
Tainted
with that view, that people who were on the ship in that night, they had a horrible time and it was super scary. We could see that since the moment that we were working there. Working on the Lady Burgess, we came across a variety of artifacts because she was carrying a cargo of medical supplies for a hospital that will be open in Madras in India. But it also brought a cargo of lead ingots, and there were plenty of mundane things, like wine bottles, silver coins, gold coins. And when you are working in a shipwreck and you are excavating and you are recovering part of the cargo of the ship, that is very impersonal, that is very cold. You are working with simple objects. That drastically changed when you find something which is much close to the human nature of, much close to people. And this happened to me working in the Lady Burgess and excavating. I found a copper plate. Is an oval, is a flat plate with 4 holes in the edges, attaching holes, that it says Mrs. Dixon. And with a little bit of research, we found out that these were luggage tags. There were the identification that people put into their luggage for these long trips. The same as we do today in the airport, that in your luggage you put a little tag with your name and your telephone and something. So this one was Mrs. Dixon. I cannot tell you the impression it made on me, the fact that finding something that has a name of the person. We know that there were people on board, of course, and we know that people died on that shipwreck. We know some people were rescued, but we know that most of them died. It is a traumatic event. But as long as you're working in the cargo or in utilitarian objects or domestic objects from the ship, you don't get that feeling of the human tragedy.
Yeah, you can kind of remove yourself from that a little bit and be like, these are just objects under the water. And you don't even really think about the social impact that might have had to somebody's life.
Exactly, but because in all this time you are not really totally aware that yes, you are working in a place where people die, because otherwise it would be too stressful for the work. So you are not thinking on that all the time. Okay, you're finding coins, or you're finding wine bottles, and these are goods, but they are moving from one place to the other, and they ended up in the seabed.
But normally they're impersonal. So
exactly, they're as cold as a cargo. It is repetitive, it's the same thing. It will be a nice subject of study, but it doesn't touch your human nature. So finding something which is obviously from the belongings of the person, but on top of it has her name on it, in this case Mrs. Dixon, it was a little bit like shocking to me as a professional and as a diver. They say, well, okay, now we are dealing with personal stuff, but real personal stuff, the luggage of someone who was called Mrs. Dixon. It didn't help that this find was made really nearby a place that we found human remains, and I have mentioned that in the other video, human remains with a lot of gold coins nearby. So we assume that the person died in that place, probably with all these gold coins in their pockets. Well, it all got a little bit creepy. And I spent the 3-4 months we were excavating the wreck like like really mourning for this Mrs. Dixon that for me lost her life in that place. We didn't know if that human remains pertain to that person or not, but it was all too close. I mean, geographically, we were talking about 2 or 3 meters away. It was all too close to ignore the fact that we have a name of a person, of a real person, and we have some human remains nearby. So that luggage tag was always for me like a very dear artifact within the sample. There were plenty of artifacts, and some of them were quite curious, like a Cupid. Cupid is the name of this little guy with the
Saint Valentine. Yeah.
Yeah, well, his guy
Yeah, Cupid
is making life of people complicated.
Yeah.
Well, we found a statue of something with it, I assume was Cupid. I mean, arrows and they were gone.
Yeah.
The statue did really resemble
Yeah.
Cupid. So there were plenty of interesting artifacts, but this Mrs. Dixon luggage tag was really heart-touching for me. But this story didn't finish with the excavation of the Lady Burgess. I was researching about another wreck, and then some years later I came across a newspaper clip from the Times. It's the 6th of June 1806, if I'm not mistaken. In the Times, I was researching about another ship, but every time that one of my old ships come up in the research, I always pay attention to the document I'm finding. So I found in this paperclip a list of the passengers that were saved from the Lady Burgess by the ship Leopard that was nearby. They were traveling together, and Leopard gave assistance to the Lady Burgess in the moment of the sinking. And suddenly I found in the list of the passengers that were rescued the Mrs. and Miss Dixon. So she and her mother were rescued from the Lady Burgess, and they made it safe to Portsmouth a few months ago, because the wreckage was in March, and in June that they were already in Portsmouth. So it is probably an exception.
Portsmouth.
In the south of England.
Yes.
That one.
Yeah.
So in a shipwreck story, there is very few times that you have this happy end, because normally you don't know about people who were on board, and if you can assume that most of them died, as in the case of the Lady Burgess, there were many people who lost their lives. But in the particular case that I was really sad about Mrs. Dixon, well, she made it, and she made it safe with her mother back to England. Now, it is only 1806. It's not that far away. It is only 200 and some few years. If any of you I know many of you are historians and people who work in archives and people who have the skills to trace down old-time families and descendants. I would really appreciate if anyone could come with an answer of finding the descendants of Mrs. Dixon. For me, it would be great. The luggage tag, is today in the Museum of Praia in caboverde. It can be seen there. It's in exhibition. So it would be really nice to know if there are descendants of these ladies, and that they would know that at least part of the luggage of their ancestors is safe and in good hands in Cape Verde. Our second case is also in the Lady Burgess, but this one has a different meaning, because we will be talking about an anachronic object, an object that is out of time in the moment of the wreckage. And we were working in the Lady Burgess. We know Lady Burgess sank in 1806, and during the excavation, I mentioned in the other video, this was a very difficult wreck to work on. So we, in each excavation spot where two divers are working, we had two containers, plastic boxes or another type of containers that we fix on the seabed, and we will put in one container the artifacts that will go on board of the ship that we are excavating at this moment, and there will be a second container which would have the most repetitive pieces of the ship. Let's say we call it second priority, because for instance, during an excavation you will find plenty of nails, pins, bolts, lead shot or what some people call them musket balls for their lead shot. They are very repetitive. They are almost in every wreck. So these are objects that will give you little information in comparison to the others. So those were accumulated in the second priority box, and the first box will come after every dive with the artifacts that will be registered and studied and put into the database. As part of my job, I normally go around the excavation spots where I put each diver to work, checking on the boxes and checking what they're doing and checking what they're finding. And in one of these second priority boxes, I found what it is, the alidate of an astrolabe. I know I said in videos before that I will be making a video about astrolabes. They are so important that they really deserve a video. I haven't done it yet, but I have mentioned it. Astrolabes are very important navigation instruments which were used in the 16th century and beginning of the 17th century, and they are very few in the world.
I have a question. What are atollites?
Alidade?
I don't know what that is.
Well, I'm getting there. The astrolabe is like ring. It's a graduated ring that it has attached an arm which has a screw in the middle, and this arm will move this way. With this arm, this alidade, the arm is the alidade. It is long like this, and then it has two holes in which you will put the sun or a certain star, and you see which is the height of the sun or that star.
The height?
The height of the sun of that star over the horizon, and then you will calculate your latitude. So this was a very important navigation instrument at the time and very precious. But astrolabes were in use in navigation for the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the British. Every naval power will use astrolabes in their long navigations, but it will be mainly 16th century, early 17th century. Let's say by the end of 17th century, these instruments were already not that useful because they start developing new and more accurate and light instruments like the octant and the sextant that were easier to use. So by the 18th century, you wouldn't have many ships going out with astrolabes. We are talking about the Lady Brigitte, who sank in the 19th century, so 1806. What an astrolabe would do in that ship? I mean, we can guess, because it's only guessing, that it could have been used as an ornament in the cabin of the captain or the pilot. They would have had this beautiful piece from the past. It was already like, for them, it was like 150 years old.
That would be my first thought. It was an ornament or a gift.
Exactly, yeah. It might have been. And on top of it, the length of the alidade is quite small. It was about 8 centimeters or something. It doesn't really fit into a working astrolabe that was slightly bigger. So it might have been part of a reproduction of highly appreciated object from the past. And this is one of the enigmas that we get in our work. I mean, imagine that tomorrow you are excavating a house. Tomorrow, no, in 300 years, you are excavating a house from the 21st century in any population. And you find these booth phones, this phone that you go like this.
Oh, yeah, rotary phone, booth phone, I have no idea. Actually, I have no idea what the correct terminology is.
Those ones that you get and you talk and you... Well, it could be in my house. They exist, but they could be in my house as an ornament because today you don't use them. So it will be an interesting find if you are excavating a house of the 21st century. That's the same that happened to me when I found this alidade of an astrolabe in an 1806 ship. Okay, so far it has been cataloged as a curiosity in our database. It is something that is totally out of the time frame that the ship went down, but still, it's an interesting find. Okay, our third mysterious object come from the Passapau wreck. I have also a video in which I talk about the Passapau wreck. It's called, I think, a wreck inside the cave. But you can check that video and you will see how intriguing that shipwreck was. Well, the find that I will be talking today, it just came to add to that confusion interpreting that shipwreck. The thing is that we found within the variety of artifacts in the Pasapao wreck, we found a pocket watch, a copper pocket watch. This in itself, it wouldn't be a very strange find, but the situation is that the Pasapao wreck, it happens approximately 1650, 1655, judging by the date inscribed in the astrolabe that we found there, in the date of the coins that we found there, in the typology of the olive jars. All these elements gave us an approximate date of mid-1600s. But then we find in the ship this pocket watch. Okay, I know what many of you will be thinking. Okay, it's an object that comes from many years later. It is not that many years, I will explain, but it comes from many years later. It should be contamination, what we call modern contamination. Someone came around the shipwreck and lost his watch, and the watch ended up within the objects of the ship, and it can get you confused. Okay, this could happen in certain areas, shipwrecks which are like in a harbor or very close to a city with a lot of human activity around it by centuries. But we are talking about the shipwreck which is in an isolated place, and most of the information you get in a shipwreck, it comes from the context of the artifacts. In the archaeological research, the artifacts give you the most of the information due to the context that they are found. An artifact by itself, an isolated artifact, yes, even if it has a lot of diagnostic attributes, it will give you some information, but the most information you get is from the context. And this is very important to record in the moment that you're excavating. So there are some of these objects which look anachronic in a shipwreck, but they are in the context of the other artifacts. So it's very hard for you to guess that, it's very easy because this came afterwards and fell down in the place. You wouldn't have found it in the context of the rest of the artifacts of the moment, of the shipwreck itself. So I started researching if the pocket watch, in the shape that this pocket watch was, if they would belong to that time. And I found very interestingly that, and I will tell you because this was so puzzling with this shipwreck, that it put together scenes which they didn't match, but the watch was one of them. The problem is that the pocket watches were developed around the 16th century, in the beginning of the 16th century, but they were not the pocket watches we know today. It were like boxes that you hang on a chain from your neck, and you have a little box that will tell you the time. It's not the pocket watch we know. The typical shape and form of the pocket watch, this round, flat object that you could put in your pocket, was actually developed in 1675 when the King Charles II from England introduced the waistcoat. The waistcoat, and to fix it in the pocket, they came up with the idea to fit it in the pockets. They have to get rid of this square shape that they had in the watches, in the chain, and make it this round object and flat without sharp edges. So yes, that was 1675, and our wreck was supposed to be about 1650. But okay, let's say that we are not that accurate in the date of the wreck. It might have been a little bit later, after 1675. But still, in that moment when this transformation of the pocket watch happened, these were precious objects. These were objects for the elite. It was for the people who had money, the people who could afford this kind of machinery. So there we go again, in the same wreck with very crazy objects in it, very crazy artifacts. These composite guns, very strange manufacture, closes with inlays of gold and silver, an astrolabe, the only astrolabe known which is coated in silver. So very high-end artifacts in a wreck that otherwise it would have been, if it was such an important ship, it would have been registered in some archive of any country. So the appearance of this pocket watch in the Pasapao wreck just came to add more enigma, more intrigue into the research of the wreck. If any of you know deeper how this pocket watch evolved and can help me shedding some light into the research, I would really appreciate it.
I have a question. Which are the most used resources when you're trying to clear up these artifact questions?
Well, normally you can go to the previous publications of other researchers that have come across to similar artifacts or to similar time periods.
Yeah.
But first, at that time, it was not that easy to access these publications because you really have to be in a library or in an archive to go through the books.
Yeah.
And second, may very well be that you are coming across an artifact which nobody else has done before, so there is no publication to help you on that. So yeah, we use previous publications as the main source, but sometimes not even that can help you 100%. The next intriguing artifact is not coming from caboverde, but from Indonesia, and it was in the Subang wreck. I have also mentioned it in the past. It is the wreck that has the largest Ming porcelain cargo ever found, but also has some intrigues and some mysteries. In this case, we found within the entire cargo of porcelain, we found many artifacts which were the same, all similar, but we have no clue what they were. It is a sort of a cauldron or a recipient with many little chimneys on top, like little pipes on top of this rounded shape that at the first view one can say, okay, it's like a boiler, but we actually don't know what it is. Actually, some of them look like made of iron and some of them look like made of ceramic. We don't really know which kind of artifact, and it's not the problem that we don't know, it's that I haven't found in other researches a similar type of artifact. It could have been something to boil liquid and use the steam. It is really, really rare. And we are talking about the wreck that has such a large, just a massive amount of ceramic items that, of course, you are trying to go in your research through the ceramics, and suddenly you find these objects, they were part of the cargo because there is not one or two. There are quite some of them that we observe on the shipwreck. Few of them were taken up as a sample, but I have contacted my Asian colleagues in archaeology that they obviously have much more experience than me in Asian culture and objects that they find more frequently, and nobody has come with the convincing answer. Nobody knows what this is. And we are talking about a shipwreck that was most probably going to the market of Surabaya in Indonesia, coming from China, with very mundane cargo. It was not something really special or a consignment from a king to another emperor in another place. It was a very mundane cargo. So what were these objects? I still completely puzzled. We didn't excavate that wreck, so I don't have the entire context of artifacts and history of the ship to try to pin it down. But if any of you have come across a similar artifact like this, I would really appreciate, or the few photos and images that I'm able to put in this video, it will ring a bell for you, or you will have seen something similar. I would really appreciate that you can let me know and get me out of my misery with this artifact. Okay, that was about the boilers of the Subang wreck. This other interesting artifact come from Cuba. When we were working in the Inés de Soto shipwreck, which I also have a video on that one, and is because not that much the anachronic nature of the artifact that is a little bit off in time with the rest of the cargo, but also because it will probably give us a glimpse of the habits of the sailors and the seamen of that time. We are talking now 1550, 1555, 1560, so mid-16th century. And is a gold filigree in the form of an earring that was found in this wreck that was coming obviously from America to Spain. But this has been described by the people who study this kind of artifact as a pre-Columbian ornament. So we are talking about 1560, so 60 years or so later than the discovery of the New World. Well, there were already people on board collecting this kind of curiosity for them. Was that the reason why a gold filigree, a pre-Columbian manufacture would be on board? And it was not alone. The together with other artifacts, we found obsidian pieces made of obsidian, which is also a material that the natives of Central and South America use a lot for some of their ornaments. Would that part of a collector within the crew, or it was a regular practice? I mean, there were already people, seamen and sailors, that they were going to the new world and bringing what they consider exotic artifacts. We know, for instance, that the wreck of Padre Island, that they have found also obsidian objects and pre-Columbian objects within the cargo. But really looking at so much of a European context and seeing these Central and South American artifacts previous to the arrival of Columbus, it always strikes you as a curiosity. That's why, I mean, we were very impressed in finding these kind of artifacts and open a new line of research within our group. So we were always researching certain areas, and now we were put into a new area, which is the Aborigine and the pre-Columbian objects and culture to investigate. So I hope that you guys have liked this video. There are obviously plenty of artifacts. This will have a second part, you bet on it, because it's getting too long. And they have plenty of objects that will raise these questions for the researchers, so I want to share it with you. If you guys, any of you, have information of these objects that I have already discussed, please let me know by the comments in the comment section of the video, because I will be checking, and this is the kind of development we want to have. That is how knowledge is produced, by exchange of information and data. So please stay tuned and keep on diving.